Welcome back to Skytech-Lens. The U.S. Treasury's latest numbers reveal a troubling trend in July 2025. The federal government posted a $291 billion deficit, a 19% jump from last year. This happened even as government income hit a record $338 billion, thanks largely to a surge in tariff revenue. Tariff collections soared to $27.7 billion, nearly 4 times last July's figure, due to aggressive trade policies. Despite this windfall, the deficit ballooned because spending outpaced revenue by a wide margin. Federal outlays hit a record $630 billion, up 10% from the previous year. The $56 billion increase in spending dwarfed the $8 billion rise in revenue, erasing any benefit from tariffs. The core issue is simple. Spending is growing much faster than income, even with record tariff revenue. This exposes a fundamental problem. Tariffs alone can't fix a structural deficit. The government is collecting more money than ever, but it's spending at an even faster, unsustainable pace. The result? Good news on revenue is immediately wiped out by runaway spending, deepening the nation's debt. The fiscal paradox is clear. A single policy lever isn't enough to solve a deep-rooted problem. The deficit's growth, despite a tariff windfall, is a warning sign for the nation's finances. Think of the government's finances like a household budget. You get a pay rise, tariff revenue, but your bills rise even faster. The government's $21 billion tariff boost is like a bigger paycheck, but its bills spending jumped by $56 billion. The result? A bigger deficit, just as a household would face a larger credit card bill if expenses outpace income. The real danger comes when the cost of past borrowing spirals out of control. For the U.S., the national debt is nearing $37 trillion, and higher interest rates are making debt payments one of the fastest-growing expenses. Focusing on one new income source, like tariffs, won't solve a structural problem where spending always exceeds income. A household in this situation would have to rethink its entire budget, not just celebrate a pay rise. Policymakers, too, can't ignore the much larger, rapidly growing spending commitments. The lesson: without addressing runaway spending, no single revenue boost can fix the deficit. The government's predicament is a warning for any budget, big or small. Real solutions require looking at the whole financial picture, not just one bright spot. To understand the deficit, we need to see where the money goes. Most federal spending is on mandatory programs, Social Security and healthcare, which run on autopilot. Social Security spending hit $1.368 trillion in the first 10 months of 2025, up 9% from last year. This growth is driven by more retirees and inflation-linked benefit increases. Healthcare programs like Medicare and Medicaid totaled $1.557 trillion, a 10% jump. An aging population and rising medical costs fuel this relentless growth. These are legal entitlements, not easily trimmed or cut. Together, Social Security and healthcare dominate the budget, their growth locked in by demographics and inflation. Cutting these is politically risky, but their automatic growth keeps pushing the deficit higher. Even record tariff revenue can't keep up with these unstoppable expenses. Another fast-growing expense is the interest on the national debt, now nearly $37 trillion. In the first 10 months of 2025, net interest payments hit $1.01 trillion, a 6% increase. This isn't money for services or infrastructure, it's just the cost of past borrowing. Rising interest rates make new and rolled-over debt even more expensive. The average interest rate on federal debt is now 3.35%, the highest since before the Great Recession. Even a small rate hike means tens of billions more in annual costs. Interest payments now exceed the entire defense budget, and even Medicare spending. This creates a vicious cycle. Higher deficits mean more debt, which means higher interest payments, fueling future deficits. Unlike other spending, interest payments are non-negotiable. Missing them would trigger a global crisis. The cost of past deficits is now crowding out today's priorities. Some argue for more tariffs to close the deficit, but this runs into the tariff paradox. Tariffs make imports more expensive, but higher rates don't always mean more revenue. At some point, imports drop, and so does tariff income. Ultimately, consumers pay the price through higher costs on everyday goods. Tariffs act as a regressive tax, hitting lower and middle-income families hardest. Aggressive tariffs also create uncertainty, discouraging business investment and slowing economic growth. A weaker economy means less tax revenue overall. Chasing tariff revenue can shrink the economic pie, undermining the very goal of deficit reduction. Tariffs are a blunt tool with real costs for families and businesses. The solution isn't as simple as raising trade barriers. Federal deficits and debt may seem abstract, but they hit home in real ways. Tariffs raise prices on everyday goods, quietly eroding your purchasing power. Your paycheck buys less, especially for families on tight budgets. Massive government borrowing pushes up interest rates for everyone, on mortgages, car loans, and credit cards. Higher borrowing costs make it harder to buy a home or finance a car. For businesses, tariffs raise input costs and higher rates make investment more expensive, slowing job growth. The fiscal imbalance is a headwind for the entire economy. These policies affect your wallet, not just Washington's balance sheet. Fiscal choices ripple through every household and business. Policymakers have three main levers to fix the deficit: control spending, broaden the tax base, or use trade policy. Each option comes with tough economic and political trade-offs. Controlling spending means reforming big programs like Social Security and Medicare, politically risky but necessary. Broadening the tax base could mean closing loopholes and taxing more economic activity, but it's unpopular. Trade policy, like tariffs, can raise revenue but risks higher prices and economic uncertainty. No single lever is a silver bullet. Each has steep costs. The real challenge is finding a balanced mix of all three. There are no easy answers, only hard choices. Digging into spending and taxes reveals why solutions are so difficult. Most spending is locked into promises: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and debt interest. Cutting discretionary spending barely dents the deficit. Real control means reforming mandatory programs, but that's politically toxic. Raising the retirement age or changing benefits is deeply unpopular. On taxes, broadening the base means eliminating deductions and closing loopholes, but every break has defenders. Simplifying the code often devolves into fights over who pays more. Economists may favor broader taxes, but politics makes consensus elusive. Every solution creates winners and losers, making real reform a political minefield. Trade policy, the administration's favored tool, offers quick revenue and political appeal, but tariffs alone can't fix a deficit driven by massive domestic spending. The Congressional Budget Office warns tariffs may slow growth and raise inflation, offsetting any fiscal gains. No single lever, spending cuts, tax reform, or tariffs, can solve the problem alone. A sustainable path requires a balanced mix: modest spending reforms, sensible tax changes, and targeted trade policy. This demands political courage and honesty about trade-offs. The July deficit is a warning. The current path is unsustainable. The real question is, what combination of tough choices are we willing to make for long-term economic health? Thanks for watching a video, and subscribe to the channel now for more updates. Thanks.